You're tuned into the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Zeno Pucks. Here are your hosts, Andy and Brian Matusi.
Welcome back to the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast presented by Zeno Pucks. It is Brian here with everybody today. No Andrew. He's out living life. He's got a bunch of stuff going on right now, so it's just going to be me. He'll be back this Sunday or Tuesday night, depending when we find out the results of the Western Conference Final. We already know Florida has made the Stanley Cup Final, but he'll be back as we preview the conference finals and set up the Stanley Cup Final. As for myself, there's a lot that's happened in the last week and a half in the league, and I felt we'd be remiss if we didn't cover it. Of course, with the worst timing ever, as you can probably tell, I'm very sick right now, but I'm going to try and power through this, as there are some things that, again, I just felt like we needed to address, and even though Andrew's not available, it's something that I wanted to at least get to, or there's a lot of things that I wanted to get to and at least make mention of. So I'm not going to waste any time, because while I still have some voice left, I want to knock down all these things. So first, I would quick congratulations to the United States winning gold at the World Championships for the first time in 92 years. Last gold medal victory for the States over there was 1933. So congrats to Ryan Warsawski, obviously. Great job coaching that team. It was a pretty solid group. I think Canada was the favorites, but after that upset loss to Denmark, it was pretty much the States for the taking, and they took full advantage. Congrats on a great tournament to Denmark and Switzerland as well. Switzerland's program has really come a long way, even within the last decade, and definitely obviously had the States on the ropes. It came down to an overtime winner by Tage Thompson, and the rest was history. But overall, Switzerland's got a lot to be proud of. Denmark's got a lot to be proud of as well. Again, I think Canada's probably very upset with the result, given the star power that they took to the tournament. But all things considered, again, for the States, it's just another victory in a list of recent victories for them. So obviously the women have had success in the Worlds recently. The men's World Junior team has had success. They took second, obviously, in the Four Nations face-off, losing to Canada, which that one kind of stinks, but hopefully they can make up for that at the Olympics next year. So Team USA is showing a lot of promise in a lot of areas, and so it's an exciting time to be an American hockey fan. And I know the World Championships isn't the big dog tournament that the Olympics is, or that even the Four Nations would have been, but it's still arguably the second biggest hockey tournament on the planet, other than the Olympics. And so to get a win there with this group, and obviously, when the group brought out the Johnny Gaudreau jersey to hold up when they were handed the trophy and their medals and all that. So that was really cool. Just a great moment for the American hockey program. So congrats to all of the guys on that team, including Coach Ryan Warsawski, who, it was a rough year in San Jose, just a lot of growing pains. But they were fun to watch. He showed he can be a coach, and he showed that he can get the team to play a structured system. For the Sharks, it's all about needing to add more talent to the roster, but he was given a good group of guys here, and they got the job done. I think it was a big tournament for Jeremy Swayman too, who really needed something to hang his hat on with the way this season went for him in Boston. So now he can look forward to the summer and regrouping with the Bruins next year. But again, congrats to the Americans on a great tournament victory. All right, moving forward, I also want to congratulate the Minnesota Frost, back-to-back Walter Cup champions, overtime winner from Liz Sheppers, and she, of course, scored the Walter Cup winning goal last season as well against Boston, but gets the overtime winner at home for the Frost. So the Frost doing their damnedest to break the Minnesota sports curse, and again, winning a trophy at home in front of 11,000 fans. It was excellent. It's I really hope the Wild can, as a fan, can take away, something from what those ladies did for the city and for the state, and, form a championship caliber roster. So congrats to those ladies, though. I do want to shout out a couple of ladies from the team. Maddie Rooney, who, first of all, I think was snubbed for a playoff MVP. I know she didn't play every game, but she was 5-0. She had a .932 save percentage in the playoffs. I know Gwyneth Phillips had an outstanding playoffs. She played every game for the Charge and was kind of thrown into it at the last second and had a .950 save percentage or whatever. She was fantastic, but I think for Maddie Rooney to not lose at all, and I know Phillips didn't lose in regulation, but to be on the winning side, have a .930 or higher save percentage, and be undefeated, I just thought it was the easy choice to make her tournament MVP or playoff MVP, or to make Lee Steckline, who as a defensive player was a point a game, 8 points in 8 playoff games. Sophie Jakes as well, 7 points in 8 games, almost a point a game. And again, as a defender in the playoffs, that's extremely difficult. I mean, when you think of guys like in the NHL that are capable of that, it's a small list. You think of the Cale Makars and the Quinn Hughes, guys like that. You don't really think of. I guess I should shout out Evan Bouchard since he's the only one. He's still in the playoffs, but you don't really think of defenders as being able to be point of game players in the playoffs. And Sophie Jakes, who almost was, and Lee Steckline, who I shouted out last week's episode, was as well. And Taylor Heisey had a great playoffs too, 7 points in 8 games. So it was a great look from that whole group. Obviously, Britta Curl-Salemi as well with the 2 goals to get game 3 to overtime and then the eventual winner. That was huge. So great run by Minnesota again. Obviously, with the PWHL's expansion coming up, everybody's roster is going to look a lot different. So as a Frost fan, after seeing them win 2 cups in a row, I'm kind of bummed that this roster is going to have a huge shakeup with the players they're going to lose. And at a later time, and probably once we get done with the expansion draft, we'll address how god-awful that format is. I can appreciate the league wanting to make the 2 new teams as competitive as possible, but I think this is going to hurt all 6 teams that already exist. So not crazy about it, but it's inevitable. And we'll just see what happens going forward from there. But again, congrats to the Frost on what was a pretty big roller coaster season, kind of all over the place. The last couple of games they absolutely had to win in regulation to get in, and they did both times. And you know what? They made the most of it. So sometimes it's not about how your season goes; it's just how you do it in the playoffs when you get there. The Florida Panthers, perfect example of that in the NHL playoffs right now as they're going for a Stanley Cup again. They kind of had a tumble into the finish line this season, and then they just turn it on in the playoffs, and the Frost did much the same here. It wasn't a great season. They'd probably tell you they need to be a lot better, but ultimately they got it done in the playoffs, and that's all that matters. So congrats to them and their group, and sad that this group's going to lose, I believe 4 players this offseason. So we'll see how it goes, but again, congrats to them. All right, let's move on here. So some housekeeping stuff around the NHL now. The Bruins are extending Don Sweeney, which was met with I don't know a nice way to put this. There really isn't. It wasn't very well responded to by Bruins fans. I think most Bruins fans were calling for his head, but those with advanced knowledge of the game will know that he's close with the Jacobs family that owns the Bruins. It's going to take a lot for him to lose his job in Boston. That's just the reality of the situation. So Sweeney will be in charge of finding the team's next head coach and starting the next chapter of the Bruins as they look forward. The old guard's gone. No Chara, no Bergeron, no Krejci. Now Marchand is with the Panthers and probably will not be going back to the Bruins based on everything I've heard so far. I mean, that could change, but they have their next wave of guys. You have your McAvoy, you have your Pasternak. And then there's pieces there that they can build around as well, like Hampus Lindholm and Jeremy Swayman, obviously, if he can have a bounce back year. So there are pieces there. Obviously, they get Casey Middlestad in the Charlie Coyle trade from the Avalanche. So it's not the end of the world for the Bruins, but I think most Bruins fans were ready to clean house, especially after how Sweeney did Jim Montgomery. But as far as the Bruins coaching is concerned, it's looking like Marco Sturm is going to be the guy, but I know Mitch Love was another candidate for that job as well. And I haven't seen anything from any major NHL insiders yet. I think everybody is, or most people have seen the Reddit post about Marco Sturm. It sounds like it's going to be the next guy, but there's no saying one way or the other yet. So we'll address that as it happens. But in the meantime, again, Sweeney will still be the GM of the Bruins as they look forward to start their new chapter and build what for Boston will hopefully be another Stanley Cup contender. Speaking of GMs, we'll go out to Long Island. Matthew Darsh, this one's kind of older news by now, but he goes to Long Island. He'll be the general manager of the New York Islanders moving forward. I really dug into Lou Lamoriello a couple weeks ago on the show, and it still sounds like there's a chance he may remain in a role with the organization, so we'll see how that pans out. But Matthew Darsh saying in his introductory press conference that he plans to keep Patrick Waugh around as the head coach. I don't think it's a terrible idea. I think you come in as a new GM. The coach that's there kind of has a system already. I know the Islanders did not have the best season, and specifically I look to Ilya Sorokin to really be an outstanding goalie next year like we know he all can be. But the Islanders are going to have to – there's going to need to be some turnover. They're going to have to figure out how to keep Noah Dobson around as well. That's a player you can't afford to lose. So there's a lot of good building blocks there. But Matthew Barzal, again, another guy that's not getting younger either. So they want what I would assume is going to be some kind of quick turnaround here. And I think they're going to have the assets to they have a group there that they can build around. It's not the best core in the league, but you add the right pieces. I feel like just about anybody can, put together a team that's competent, and how competent that is, I don't know. But for the Islanders going forward, I think this is a good hire. Darsh spent a lot of time with the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Stanley Cup teams, that they built. And so I think this will bring some kind of pedigree to the Islanders that they badly need. I mean, they can't just keep riding second fiddle to the Rangers, who, this season, both New York teams weren't that great. So, but for the Islanders, they really want to take that next big step forward. And I think this is a step in the right direction. You bring in a guy with Stanley Cup caliber. I know Wah hasn't won a Stanley Cup as a coach, but obviously he's won as a player and knows what it takes to be part of a team that does that. So I like the mindset of the Islanders. I certainly like it a lot more than just leaving the keys in loose hands to keep running this thing into the ground. So we'll see how it looks on the island this summer. I'm sure it'll be a fun summer. It's going to be a fun summer for a lot of teams with the cap going up and just everything. It's not going to be the craziest free agent class. So I envision we'll see a lot of trades as teams look to shake it up to make themselves more competitive, or the rebuilding teams look to unload to add more draft picks and young prospects to their rosters. But the Islanders, again, a team that I think, especially with the first overall pick now, have a chance to really turn things around quickly. So we'll see where it goes. You have to forgive me for these little pause breaks in here. I'm just having to clear my throat and sniffle, and I'm just trying not to do it into the mic. So excuse me for that. Let's move on here into Chicago. Jeff Blashill officially announced as the head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks. Obviously spent plenty of years in Detroit. Unfortunately, none of those led to a playoff season, but he was kind of brought in into an unfortunate circumstance. I personally don't think he's the best coach, but you know what? He was given a really shitty hand in Detroit. That team was at the tail end of the Red Wings dynasty that made the playoffs 25 years in a row. And so he was kind of left in an unfortunate spot, and you could argue maybe his coaching could have yielded some better results from the team, but you could also argue the team on the ice wasn't that great. So there's a little responsibility on both ends of this, but I think Blashill is unfortunately again put in a tough situation in Chicago. I don't think he's the worst decision they could have made, but the Blackhawks still aren't ready to compete yet, barring a huge summer from them. You're still looking at a team that's probably not even going to be in the playoffs next year. It doesn't sound like they're going to be one of the runners for Mitch Marner. And you can say what you want about his playoff performance, but in the regular season, he's a guy that scores. He's a guy that wins you games. The Hawks are really going to need to look to add some big names. I know obviously they're going to look for more from guys like Nazar and Connor Bedard, but I don't know if Jeff Blashill is the right guy. I still think the Hawks have a lot of holes to fill, and I don't think this is the right coaching hire for them. I know they had a lot of eggs in their basket for trying to bring in David Carl from the University of Denver, but that didn't work out for them, and I don't think this was a good fallback. So we'll see where it takes the Blackhawks. They could completely blow it out of the water at the draft and in free agency and turn this team around. But as it sits right now, it's really looking like an uphill battle for not only them, but Jeff Blashill, again, as he looks to stake his name and as a good head coach in this league. All right, so moving on to Toronto, Brendan Shanahan, this one we all saw coming from a mile away, officially announced by MLSE last week that he would not be staying around as the president of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Owner Keith Pelly saying that the franchise has no plans to replace the president role and that he wants to work directly with the GM, Brad Treliving, and the head coach, Craig Berube, on building this team and reorganizing this mess that they have in front of them. As the Leafs are a team, obviously, it goes without saying, that have struggled in the playoffs the last decade now. And I think ownership is tired of it and they want to win. And, I think they're going to look at this from a new angle. Again, getting rid of that president of hockey ops role. You let the owner work with the GM. And it sounds like they want Berube to be more involved with getting a team iced that he likes to fit his style of coaching. And Berube is a great coach. So I think letting him be a part of this is going to be huge for the Leafs going forward. There's a long way to go. And there's a lot of bad omens and curses that this group's going to have to break when they rebuild it. But I think this is a good step in the right direction. And I'm among those that think they completely need to blow it up and pretty much leave only Matthew Nyes and like Chris Tanev behind. And that's it, because and Matthews too, obviously you're married to that contract, but Nylander, Tavares, and Marner, I think they should let walk. It sounds like Marner's walking regardless. But Nylander, I think, has got to go. Matthews, again, that's one you're just married to. And Nyes, it sounds like he really wants to stay in Toronto. He's a great young power forward. He's the youngest player on the team. I think that's a guy that's part of your future no matter what team he's on. So I think it's the Leafs have similar to the Hawks, they have an interesting journey ahead of them just for a very different reason. This is a group that can get it done in the regular season, but just explodes in the playoffs every year. So be interested to see how it is going forward with Tree Living having all of his hands on this and not having to, answer to Brendan Shanahan anymore, who kind of infamously was the one who had the final say on how the team was run, and it sounds like resulted in the team being poorly run. So, and that's not to say Brendan Shanahan didn't do great things for the organization. I mean, you could look at 1,000 things he did that were better as far as changing the culture on the team, because the decade leading up to him becoming president was even worse because they couldn't even make the playoffs. They were that bad. So, he brought back, he got the team reconnected with a lot of its greatest players in its history and retired a bunch of numbers, had a huge ceremony, again, changed the culture around the team, but the results in the playoffs weren't good enough. So now they're going to they have that culture change. Now they need to look to change the results and how they play. All right, let's see. Before I move on to these last couple of things here, I do want to take a minute to hear from our friends over at Xenopuck. So we'll play that read real quick for you guys, and then I'll be right back. We'll talk about a couple more things before I go.
It's hockey season, and you're looking to work on your stick handling or maybe even your shot, but ice time just isn't an option for you right now. Luckily, our buddies over at Xenopucks have got you covered. They've developed an elite off-ice practice puck that, in addition to looking like the real thing, is the same size and weight as a regulation hockey puck to give you that authentic feel on the end of your stick. It works better than other off-ice practice pucks on almost any surface, whether you use it on hardwood, carpet, concrete, or even asphalt. Xenopucks glide like a real puck on ice. So if you're looking to improve your game without setting foot on the ice, head over to www.xenopucks.com and get yourself a puck. Check out their merch selection and be sure to follow them on Instagram at Xenopucks.
And welcome back. So thanks again to our friends at Xenopucks for sponsoring our show. Always appreciate you guys. All right, final two things. I'm actually going to do this a little out of order because there's one that really irritates the shit out of me. So final two things. We're going to do a quick Blue Jackets corner. Again, just to mention, Zach Werenski obviously goes to the World Championships, wins the gold. Hopefully in a couple of weeks here, he'll be winning the Norris Trophy as well. And I believe the King Clancy was the other one he was nominated for. So hopefully some more hardware for Z to add to the cabinet this offseason. But again, a gold medal at the World Championships as part of a team that hasn't won that tournament since 1933 and hadn't even been to the gold medal game since the 50s is just incredible. I think most smart people assumed Canada was going to win this. And after they lost to Denmark, the US, it's like, okay, this is very obviously their tournament to lose now. And to their credit, the whole team stepped up, but great for Zach to cap what was one of the best seasons, arguably the best season of his career, off by winning a gold medal at the World Championships. And of course, he's the one that is holding up the Johnny Gaudreau jersey when they get the World Championship trophy. And, he was the one responsible for bringing, they brought one of Johnny's hats over and out of the tournament to give to the player of the game after every game. So just a really great way to put a cherry on top of this season for Z. Obviously, the Jackets next year, hoping for a big summer, hoping for a big turnaround, or not a big turnaround, but hoping to build on this season and go into next year and look to turn this team into a powerhouse. They're not as far away as a lot of people probably think, at least on the outside. I think people close to the Blue Jackets organization or the diehard fans will see that there are the pieces there. It's just all about they got to add some finishing touches on. I think seeing what Caden Lindstrom can do now that he's healthy, I think could go a long way. I really hope he makes the team out of camp for them. So we'll see how it goes for the Jackets. But once again, Zach and Team USA, congratulations on bringing the gold home to the United States. And for Canada, well, better luck next year, right? That's what they always tell us, the Olympics. Better luck next time. So we'll finish off. I just mentioned the Olympics. We'll finish with this. The IIHF and the IOC have come out and announced that Russia will remain banned from the 2026 Olympics, obviously due to the ongoing conflicts between Russia and Ukraine. For those of you who are newer to the show and don't know, last year I went off on an absolute tirade about how I think it's bullshit that Russia is not in these tournaments. Now, we don't get very political on this show, and we like to keep it that way. I will say this: the conflict going on between Russia and Ukraine is disgusting. I don't think there's really anybody out there that agrees with what Russia is doing, and it's shitty that this is kind of the world we do live in. You look outside of this game, and it's really sad that this is the world we live in. It's real life. These are real things happening. There are real people losing their lives, and I understand all of that. But my big point last year when I had this rant was that the players involved in this game are not responsible for that. And I understand both organizations, the International Ice Hockey Federation and the International Olympic Committee. I understand them not wanting to reward a country that is, taking part in these awful acts. They don't want to reward them by giving them a chance to play in these games. But what they're doing is robbing these great athletes the opportunity to showcase their best. I think it was 2018. They had the Olympic athletes from Russia, because Russia was banned from those Olympics, I think, at least as a country, because of the doping scandal. This was pre-war. But now, again, they're banned because of all this stuff with Ukraine. And it just bothers me a lot that this is where we're at, that these athletes gets punished for this. Some of the best players in the National Hockey League are from Russia, and they're missing a chance on showcasing and representing their country, and not even representing their country per se, but missing out on the chance to play together and show what their skill is as one group. Because of all this. And that's the part I don't think is fair. And a lot of people will not like this take. A lot of the hockey shows I've listened to, most people agree that they should not be allowed. And so I'm not saying I expect this to be well received. I just think punishing these athletes for something they have zero control of is just simply unfair. I mean, and again, not to get too political, but you look at the mess the United States is right now. And now granted, we're not invading Ukraine or anything like that, but this country is so far from perfect. But for example, our program just won gold at the World Championships. You can make the argument, the U.S. shouldn't be allowed here because they're doing the X, Y, and Z in the real world as far as wars and conflicts, trade wars, blah, blah, blah. Again, we're not going to get into all that. That's not what this show is. But you can make the same argument, the U.S. shouldn't be allowed because of this. Well, again, punishing the athletes isn't exactly fair because of the actions of a couple of stupid people. So I just, rather than go on another long rant about that, I just want to say I feel sorry for the NHL players that are from Russia that will not be able to partake in this tournament because there are so many high-skill guys. You think of Kaprizov, you think of Kucherov, guys like that, but you also think about a guy like Alex Ovechkin. This would probably be his last chance to play in the Olympics before retirement, and he's not going to get it, and that just stinks. Or you think of a guy like Bob, too. He's getting up there in age, and there's a chance that he could be retiring before too long. So you just never know. And it stinks that we're not going to get to see some of these guys in their prime and some of these guys on the back nine of their career trying to ride off into the sunset. It just stinks that we're not going to get to see them play in the Olympics. So whether you agree or not with me that Russia should be allowed in, I think we can all agree that it sucks. At the very least, it sucks we're not going to get to see some of the game's best players in these international tournaments. So that's all I got for you guys today. We will be back either Sunday if the Oilers close out this series in Game 5 or Game 6. Otherwise, we'll be back Tuesday night, I believe. If this goes 7, we'll be back Tuesday to do a Stanley Cup Final preview. Again, we already know the Panthers are there. Anders is giddy as he possibly can be. I'm excited for him, excited for the Panthers. But they will await their opponent, which will either be Dallas or the Oilers. So regardless of who it is, we'll talk to you guys in a few days. Take care, and let's all hope to God this god-awful voice I have is fixed by Sunday.